Sutra, Sar, Dani, and all Lama, Yadon Kango, some, Tana, Lama, Kusum, Tosam, and all of them on the Tana, Songi, Jamji, Boundary, Papa Genji, something, no look at Kadu. All of them on the Tana, Rang, Zal, Lama, Songi, Kadu, something. Elatin, Lama Songi, no. And then Naranga, Yonson, Yadon, long, true. And I don't nominated Yadon, Jerem, Zorona, and around by your dead Buddha. Yadon, the Tommy, Cuban move. I don't know, long David Castle, and Jindon Party, something several control, Cuban. Public dancing more. They are the whole of them. Alamaya, Kando, some and Javier, so on.
Dharma continues to say that what are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, according to the Sutra tradition, are the Guru, the Yidam deity, the Dakini, or the Lama, the Yidam, Kandro, as it would be called in Tibetan, in the Tantra or in the Mantrayana tradition. In the Sutrayana, we take refuge into Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and we place ourselves under the protection of Guru, Yidam, and Dakini. In the Tantra tradition, in the Tantric tradition, it is the Guru, the Lama himself, who is the Buddha for us, who is essentially, different from the Buddha, and thus we place ourselves under his, or her, for that matter, hers protection. That which is essentially the Dharma is that by way of which we train ourselves, which in the Tantra tradition are the various meditation practices and techniques of the various meditative deities who are commonly known as the Yidam practices. And then, of course, there are those who help to protect us and from obstacles on the path, those who help to eradicate obstacles on the path, to further spur us on that path. These are the Dharma protectors and the Dakinis. So in this way, Guru, Yidam, and Dakini in the Tantra tradition are the equivalent of what we call Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in the Sutra tradition. And Karmapa continues to say that all of these are ultimately united in the Gurus, in the Lamas, body, speech, and enlightened awareness. So when it says that all of these Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Guru, Yidam, and Dakini, as well as Protector, are united in the Guru's body, speech, and awareness, how do we understand that? In the Vajrayana tradition, the Guru, the teacher, the Lama, as we could call them, these teachers are of central, absolutely essential importance. And simply the presence of the teacher is that which is no different from the Sangha, from the community of those who practice the Dharma. So the physical appearance, the bodily presence of the teacher is Sangha in this regard. His speech, through which he teaches us the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, is Dharma in that regard. And the Lamas, the Gurus, enlightened awareness is no different from Buddha. So in this way, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, etc., are combined, are united in the shape of the Lama.
落地抛单数的这个呢，落地就是这了的落地上面这了3年就把有买，见着嘛，落地结果的，他见着落地前呢，这样他都给占住人，说嘛，落地等一起去呢。
So in this way, it is the root teacher, the root guru or lama, and of course Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the 3 jewels, the 3 rare and precious ones, under whose protection we place ourselves, to whom we go for advice, for guidance, for refuge, for that matter. And accordingly, Kalachakna closes this verse by way of saying, since you are that sole refuge for me, it is you who knows what is to be done. So he addresses himself, or if we would pray like this, we would address ourselves in this way to the teacher, recognizing that the teacher being the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha for us, being the combination of all the sources of refuge, there is not a higher refuge. There is no higher instance under whose protection we could place ourselves. There is no higher source of protection to whom we could go for guidance and advice, etc. Therefore, we recognize that the teacher is that highest instance for that matter, and we trust him or her for that matter with the words, it is you who knows what to do, it is you who will eradicate whatever obstacles, whatever problems could possibly appear on the path, it is you who knows how to guide us along that path.
Rāni sōngi tōpī māchū te sēntiñ tānti pāma rīñjīn hēng tā ngārāng nyāng sō lēne ngārāng kīpō sōngi kia kōmō tōp tāyāng tā tīgē tēnī pēnā pēntū jā chēmbō yō mā rī tē kānāñi sēnā tēnī sēntiñ tānti te ngārāng sōnga kōwa tōmā mē bā pāma shōtā hēng 다 제 당시 다다 동할 그 롱진 근데 봐. 제라 다 담보 생긴 당시 성지에서 깨터 받더니 그 구요 맞. 마랑 기보 성지 공부터 되니 되게 편도요 말이에요.
Kalachakna's next verse begins with the words, to achieve Buddhahood only for myself will not do. All beings who have been my kind fathers and mothers, or have been my fathers and mothers, have shown me great kindness. This is simply to say that it doesn't do simply to strive for the awakening of Buddhahood only for one's own personal sake, while disregarding all of these other beings who invariably have been our kind fathers and mothers in previous lifetimes. Therefore, it goes without saying that we should strive for the awakening of Buddhahood, not only for our own sakes, but for the sake of all beings. We should strive to bring about the ability to establish all of these beings, all of these previously kind fathers and mothers of ours, in the awakening of Buddhahood.
다다 뇽도 존네 누구가서 되니 아바다 안에 말하라 세와 체불고는 되니 성종 전부 자기도와 성종 전부 제요래와 되니 아바다 아마디 셔성나 다 나랑 존는 메시네 요마이 나랑가 아마데 넘시세 넘버시 리주 간디 현재 개와 농요 나랑가 아바셔성한 되게 넘을 해봐 리주 간지 제와 농요 나랑 좀 성노지 당나 다 가나 요 시기면도 와 요는 senjin dāla jewa nōni yōri. Te pe te rā, te senjin tāngji ārāngsō pāmayi himbari.
Time and again we hear of all sentient beings who have invariably been our fathers and mothers. We might wonder, what exactly does that mean? How should we deal with this? What does that mean for us personally? Well, it simply means to consider all of these beings who have indeed been all of our parents, and we're best advised to simply take into account or take into consideration our own parents of this present lifetime. For the most part, when we get together with our parents or similarly close loved ones, it is a harmonious coming together. They are full of care and affection for us, and they show us all sorts of kindness. They help us wherever possible, in whichever way is possible for them, etc., and so forth. But then, eventually, the time will come for them for body and awareness to part. They will die. Right now, we can still go into their presence, we can encounter them, we can talk to them, we can exchange ourselves with them and talk about all sorts of things. But eventually, they will leave this world. Their bodies will die, and their consciousness will go somewhere. Of course, naturally, it has to go somewhere within this realm of samsara. It has to be reborn somewhere within the 6 possible means of rebirth, the 6 possible realms of birth in which beings commonly take place within samsara. At that time, we do not know where they go, we do not know what will become of them, but it is certain that this will definitely come to pass. So it's all of these beings who have gone that way, all who have gone that path, who have been our parents, just as our present day, our present life parents are our loving and kind parents, which are to be taken into consideration.
And then, Katayana, Papa Katayana, Musum take a gola, Casa Sisi, Tarin Mason take a Choga take a Tacharon takes it and go, Meso Samasago or that. And then Papa Katayana, Yang. Consul Samati, Kandi Sagado, Conga, Taki Tandu, Consul Nachimbo, Jacksine, Tiki shot a corner to Sago. The Nati number keeper, the J. Zigdu, Coron, Pocoronga, Abake, number keeper. Then they go on and chetty yori, Nari, Rupaton, the Tela, Penny. The Chetela, Conga, Taki, the means like John Janis, the Chetty, Amake, Jewari. Then they Coron Tonga. Then he means the poverty in a Zandur. Poverty la Taji, on the Kiamama, Coron, Dragon, Ever Saving, then Matop Chimuchi, Yori, or Titi, poverty, Kiawari. Then in Papa Katayak, then Corrid Nina, then the Abag Shati, Sa, then Abag, Rubati, Amatera, Chetera, Yen. And Coronzo, Joe, Dr. Mutani, very Pancana, Colony, Corgan, and the Doji, you're a contact and this one.
So all of these beings who have been our parents, once they have left their bodies, and they will be reborn somewhere within the 6 realms of existence, within this cycle of suffering, they still remain our previously kind parents. And in order to exemplify how these things work and how all beings indeed are like that, how they have been connected to us in one way or other in previous lifetimes, there is a story that happened a short time after the Buddha himself, one of the close students of the Buddha, the Arhat Katayana, who was highly developed and highly clairvoyant, went on his daily alms round. In these old days, back in India, it was the custom that fully ordained monks would only have time to collect food until the midday hour, because after that, by monastic regulation, they would not be allowed to eat. So they would walk through the streets of the towns, they would walk through the villages, wherever they would be, and they would have a particular staff, a monk's staff, at the top of which some metal rings would be fastened, and they would make a jingling sound, so when people would hear this sound coming, They would know there are Buddhist monks on the way and they're looking for alms, and those who would be so inclined would then offer food to them, which they would collect in their bowls to eat later on. This Arhat Katayana then one day came upon a scene which clearly exemplifies how beings are connected. He knocked at the door at a particular place which was opened, and he was told to please wait a little bit because the family had actually just sat down to eat. And he happily waited, and he just examined the scene that presented itself to him. There sat the family in the courtyard of the house. They had lit a fire over which they grilled a large fish, which they proceeded to eat. And as he looked in his clairvoyance, what's the connection between all of these beings whom he beheld at this particular point might possibly have been, he clearly saw that the fish, which was just about to be eaten, in his previous life had been the father of that family, had been, for that matter, the father of the young woman who was grilling the fish and who was dishing it out to the rest of the family. That fish had been their own father. There was a dog also somewhere in the courtyard who was hungrily waiting for some scraps, and the bones of the fish were thrown at the dog. And as Arhat Katayana looked, he saw that this dog had indeed been the mother of that family, the mother of that young woman in her previous lifetime. And as the young woman sat there and eating the fish and throwing the fish bones at the dog, at the same time she nursed a little baby, a newborn child, lovingly at her breast. And as Katayana looked, he saw that this child, which she so lovingly held in her lap or at her breast, was in his previous life none other but the very worst enemy of that family, who was a great influential person who had caused that particular family lots and lots of harm, lots and lots of grief. And he looked at this scene, he understood the interrelationship between all of these beings, and then he had himself a little laugh and went away exclaiming, "Such is the nature of samsara. They eat the flesh of their father, they throw the bones at the mother, and they nurse their worst enemy at their breast." And with that, he went away. This is just exactly the way things are. Such is the interrelationship between beings. However, at the moment, we ourselves, as rather more ordinary, obviously rather less enlightened beings, lack the ability to see these interrelationships, lack the ability to lack the clairvoyance to see how things might possibly be in the future. Of course, within the realm of samsara, we can be born through one of the four types of birth. And by all means, there is the so-called miraculous birth, by which we are being born in the God realms, for instance. There is also the type of birth that is said to come together through the interrelationship between heat and humidity. So in these two types of birth, there is no such thing as a mother being. But in the other two types of births, which remain either through a womb of a mother, of course, or through an egg, we will invariably be cared for, we will be taken care of by some type of mother or other. And this holds true for all types of beings who are being born through one of these two types of births. Not only in the human realm, but also in the animal realm. We can see this very clearly. Nowadays, there are many documentaries available, and we can study closely how animals of whatever type interact with each other. And even though one might be born as a ferocious lion or a tiger cub or something of that sort, in that particular circumstance there will be a being, which is our mother, who brings us into this world in the first place and who lovingly cares for us. So in this way, not only through in this lifetime or in previous lifetimes of similar sorts, there will always have been a mother that has lovingly cared for us, that has shown us kindness, that has fed us, that has, in the human case, clothed us, and that has protected us to the very best of her ability. This is simply the way things are. In this way, all beings are connected. No mistake about it. And in this way, all of these beings have, some time or other, to a greater or lesser degree, shown us kindness. That being the case, if we considered this point properly, we could by all means be moved to give rise to the attitude that wishes to establish all of these beings in the awakening of Buddhahood, which is the complete liberation of suffering, for that matter. Not only ourselves, but all of them. If we were endowed with this attitude, if we had given rise to this attitude, which is commonly known as Bodhicitta, the enlightened attitude, or the awakened heart, literally, then this in itself would become the very seed for our own enlightenment. Only if we give rise to this attitude, which takes an active interest in establishing others in that state which we also strive for, namely the awakening of Buddhahood, the complete, lasting liberation of suffering. Only if we are endowed with that attitude do we even stand a chance to progress to that lofty goal ourselves. Or, if one would look at it from the other point, from the other perspective, if we do not give rise to that attitude, then there is no way we will ever achieve Buddhahood. Without the attitude of Bodhicitta, without that enlightened attitude, that wish from the very bottom of our hearts to be able to establish all beings in the awakening of Buddhahood, there will be no Buddhahood for us. That's just as easy as it is. Therefore, we would be very well advised to use whatever opportunity arises for ourselves to think with love, and with kindness, and with gratitude and appreciation of others. Also, the Buddha of our very own age, the Buddha of our time, did not do it any other way. And after he had achieved the awakening of Buddhahood, he told of how he went about this himself. He told of the story of how many, many lifetimes, many eons ago, he himself, as an aspiring Bodhisattva and Buddha, went into the presence of the Buddha of that time, the Buddha Shakyamuni, and how in the presence of this Buddha he first gave rise to the attitude of enlightenment, to the attitude of Bodhicitta, formulating clearly his resolve and his wish to work for the benefit of beings, to bring about the establishment of Buddhahood for the sake of all of these beings. And then in the course, over the course of 3 incalculable eons, as it is called, he went through many lifetimes, in each of which he trained himself in the accumulation of merits, in the dedication of merit for the sake of beings, so that he slowly progressed towards that final lifetime of his in which he manifested in our time, in our world, as the Buddha. What came of this, we all know. History teaches us that Buddha Shakyamuni, who's the Buddha of our time, then eventually, after years of training, went to the place in northern India that is nowadays known as Bodh Gaya. He sat down under the Bodhi tree at what is nowadays known as the Vajra seat, and at this particular place in our time, in our world, he demonstrated the enlightenment, the awakening, full awakening of Buddhahood. And after having done so, he time and again clearly pointed out what was the seed of this awakening of Buddhahood that he had demonstrated, which of course was none other but his initial awakening of the enlightened attitude for the sake and welfare of all beings. And exactly in this way, of course, we would be very well advised to do just the same. This is the way to proceed. There is no other way. Therefore, continuously, in whichever situation, at whatever time you think of it, remind yourself of the fact that in the end, all beings have been our kind parents, have shown us kindness, love, etc., and so forth, and that all of these beings who are presently immersed in suffering need to be established in the awakening of Buddhahood. Therefore, at least try to bring into your life and into your interaction with others some patience, some kindness, friendliness. Take it from there. If you're still not convinced, you might ask, what benefit is in this for me? What's in it for me? Why on earth would I give rise to such an attitude? What could possibly be the outcome for myself? The great Bodhisattva, the Indian master Shantideva, has said quite clearly, for the person who gives rise to this attitude, the enlightened attitude of Bodhicitta, there are 2 benefits. Even though such a person may have been born an ordinary being, as of the moment of giving rise to this attitude, they rise above this ordinary birth, and they're worthy of naming themselves, or they're worthy of being called Bodhisattvas. That was one benefit. The second benefit for that particular being, for such a person, is that all the powerful gods of this world, be they Indra, Brahma, Mahadeva, what have you, and all these spirits and demons, elemental spirits of the world, etc., they will venerate such a person as a source of refuge. They will go to such a person who has clearly risen above the ranks of ordinary beings, who has become a bodhisattva, as their source of refuge and pay homage and obeisance to such a being. And exactly in this way, our own development of bodhicitta, our own enlightened attitude, which we also give rise to, will be the very source, the very seed for our own awakening of Buddhahood, for our own going beyond liberation and achieving complete enlightenment. That being the case, we would be well advised to train ourselves time and again, at whatever time, whatever possibility presents itself, in being loving, in being kind, in being friendly and appreciative towards others. But even though we might be endowed with such bodhicitta, with this enlightened attitude which strives to bring about the lasting benefit and welfare of beings, there's still another thing which we need, which is that which cuts off the root of the world, which cuts off the root of samsara itself. It is that which cuts off ignorance about how things and appearances and phenomena truly are. So what we need to find out, what we need to become completely clear about, is mind nature itself. Accordingly, the third Karmapa, Rangjung Dorje, has said in his famous Mahamudra aspiration, or his prayer for the realization or achievement of the attainment of Mahamudra, to look at that which cannot be seen. That which cannot be seen will be clearly recognized. So we have heard time and again in the course of such teachings to simply allow a mind to rest in its natural state and to allow mind or awareness to look at mind or awareness. And we have heard time and again that as hard as we may look, there is nothing that can be seen in any such a way so that we could say it has a shape, it has a color, it has a particular dwelling place, or whatever of that sort. However, it is exactly that practice, that kind of continuous practice which is repeated again and again, that will eventually allow us to see that which cannot be seen because it does not have any characteristics that we could possibly dab onto it. In this way we will eventually see or understand mind nature as it is. We will directly come to experience it as empty, as it is being described. So in this way, indeed, there is nothing to be seen. Allowing mind to look at itself, nothing can be seen in any which way. However, exactly that is that which is to be done, to allow awareness to vividly, freshly awake, rest in its natural state. That is that which will eventually bring about the realization of how mind nature truly is. To understand this, to rest in this, to practice according to this instruction, this is what is called the pointing out of mind nature. Let us try this out right here and now. Let us try to allow our consciousness to become conscious of itself in its very own natural way. Let us practice thus.
There is a drawing.
We have time for a couple of questions, if there should be any.